Four-time world champions, the most decorated European nation in World Cup history, a team that has appeared at every single World Cup they have been eligible to enter since 1934. And yet, in September 2025, Germany walked into Bratislava, faced Slovakia, and got completely undone. 2 goals, 0 answers, and for the very first time in 52 away qualifying matches, they lost. Let that number sit for a moment. 52 games away from home in World Cup qualifying without a single defeat. That's not a streak, that's a dynasty. And Slovakia ended it like it was nothing. But here's the thing. That result alone is not the most alarming part of this story, because what the Slovakia defeat revealed wasn't just a bad night. It exposed something much deeper, a crack in the foundations of one of football's most powerful nations, right at the moment they're preparing for the biggest World Cup in history. And the way Germany's entire campaign played out after that tells a story that FIFA, the pundits, and even the German Football Federation probably don't want talked about too loudly. So let's talk about it. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is going to be the largest football tournament ever staged. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 cities across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It's the most ambitious version of the competition in the sport's history, and expectations could not be higher. For Germany, this tournament carries enormous weight. They haven't advanced past the group stage in their last 2 World Cup campaigns, not in 2018 in Russia, not in 2022 in Qatar. Back-to-back group stage exits for a nation that won the whole thing in 2014. That's not a blip, that's a pattern. And it's a pattern that Julian Nagelsmann and his squad need to break this summer, or the questions about German football will become very difficult to answer. Which is exactly what makes the Slovakia result so significant. The group was not supposed to be a problem. Germany were placed in UEFA qualifying Group A alongside Slovakia, Northern Ireland, and Luxembourg. On paper, it looked like a formality. Germany have the talent, the depth, the resources. Florian Wirtz, Joshua Kimmich, Jonathan Tah. Names that command respect at the highest level. All they needed to do was show up, stay professional, and collect the points. Instead, on September 4th, 2025, Atletico Madrid defender David Hanko opened the scoring 3 minutes before halftime. Middlesbrough striker David Strelic twisted away from Antonio Rudiger and curled the ball into the top corner in the 55th minute. Germany's response? Almost nothing. In the final 10 minutes, they barely threatened. The match ended 2-0, and the football world genuinely could not believe what it had just watched. What happened next is where the story starts to shift from embarrassing to genuinely revealing. Julian Nagelsmann did not try to soften the blow in his post-match comments. He didn't talk about a bad day at the office or unfortunate decisions at key moments. He went directly after the spirit of the performance. He said that being a better player than the opponent is not enough if you don't show willingness and desire. He compared his squad to a Bayern Munich side that had nearly been knocked out of the domestic cup by lower league opposition, suggesting the problem wasn't quality, but mentality. And then he said something that cut even deeper. He indicated that perhaps next time he would need to call up players with less quality, but who would give everything on the pitch. A national team coach suggesting he might need to sacrifice talent in order to find heart. That is not a tactical adjustment. That is a fundamental question about the soul of the team. The statistics surrounding that defeat made it worse. It wasn't just Germany's first ever away defeat in World Cup qualifying after 52 unbeaten games. It was also their second qualifying defeat by more than 1 goal in history, the only comparable result being England's famous 5-1 win in 2001. Germany had now failed to keep a clean sheet in 6 consecutive matches, and most significantly, it completed their first ever three-game losing streak as a unified nation across their 117-year history. 3 consecutive defeats in their entire history as a country. That had never happened before. Slovakia made it happen. The analysis that followed was brutal. Commentators noted a complete tactical breakdown. Kimmich floating between midfield and right back with no clear purpose, Rudiger having arguably his worst ever performance in a German shirt, the backline pushing forward and leaving space that Slovakia kept finding, and through it all, a collective inability to string passes together, press the ball with conviction, or create anything that looked like genuine danger. Now, here's where things get really interesting, because after all of that, Germany recovered. They won their next 5 qualifying matches. They beat Northern Ireland, Luxembourg, and then, in the final game of the group stage, they put 6 past Slovakia at home in Leipzig. 6 goals against the same team that had beaten them 2 months earlier. They topped Group A with 15 points from a possible 18. They qualified comfortably. Crisis averted. Or was it? Because that recovery, while impressive on the scoreboard, actually raises a different kind of question, one that football analysts are now beginning to ask as Germany prepares for the 2026 World Cup in North America. Germany's ability to bounce back from the Slovakia humiliation with 5 straight wins shows that the quality is there. Nobody disputes that. But what the entire qualifying campaign illustrated is something more subtle and perhaps more troubling. Germany can turn it on when they need to. When the stakes are obvious and the pressure is undeniable, they respond. But in that opening qualifier, a moment that should have felt important, they sleepwalked. They went through the motions. They treated it like a formality, and Slovakia punished them for it. The problem is that the 2026 World Cup doesn't care about form or recovery stories. It doesn't matter how Germany qualified. What matters is what they do when it counts. And their last 2 World Cups have shown a team that can't quite find that switch at the tournament itself. They couldn't find it in Russia in 2018 when they went out in the group stage. They couldn't find it in Qatar in 2022 when they went out in the group stage again. And in the very first game of their qualifying campaign for 2026, against opposition ranked significantly below them, they couldn't find it in Bratislava either. This is the question hanging over Germany heading into the summer. It's not whether they have the players, they clearly do. Florian Wirtz is one of the most exciting creative midfielders in European football. Nick Woltemade offers a physical presence and a direct goal threat that Germany rarely had in previous eras. Jamal Musiala, despite a serious ankle injury suffered at the Club World Cup in the summer, is working toward fitness and could yet be a decisive factor. The squad, on paper, is genuinely capable of a deep run. But the mental architecture around this Germany team is fragile in a way that their talent doesn't fully reflect. And there's a broader point here that matters beyond Germany specifically. The 2026 World Cup format, 48 teams, 12 groups of 4, with the top 2 from each group and the 8 best third-place finishers advancing, means that a nation of Germany's caliber is statistically extremely unlikely to be eliminated at the group stage. But extremely unlikely is not impossible, and Germany have done it twice in a row. Their group at the 2026 World Cup is Group E: Curaçao, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. In isolation, that looks manageable, but in the context of everything we've seen, nothing involving Germany at a major tournament feels like a formality anymore. Curaçao are making their World Cup debut, a historic moment for a small Caribbean nation. Ivory Coast bring genuine quality in attack, with Manchester United's Amad Diallo among a new generation of players, and they arrive as reigning Africa Cup of Nations champions under coach Emers Faye. Ecuador are not a side to underestimate. They qualified second in CONMEBOL behind Argentina, and central midfielder Moises Caicedo is one of the most complete players in that position in world football. Germany open against Curaçao in the United States. It sounds straightforward. The last time Germany faced a team they expected to beat comfortably in their opening qualifier, they lost 2-0 in Bratislava. What does all of this mean for the bigger picture of the 2026 World Cup itself? Germany arriving at this tournament as a nation with genuine uncertainty around them is actually significant for the tournament's narrative. When a nation of Germany's status is carrying this kind of baggage, back-to-back group stage exits, a qualifying campaign that started with a historic defeat, a coach publicly questioning the desire of his own players, it adds pressure and storyline to every match they play. Group E becomes more than a formality. It becomes a watch-this-space situation. And football, at its best, thrives on exactly that kind of tension. But there's also something larger being tested here. The 2026 World Cup is the first to feature 48 teams. One of the arguments for expansion was that more teams meant more stories, more drama, more opportunity for the unexpected. Germany's qualifying campaign, and the questions it leaves heading into the tournament, is a reminder that the unexpected doesn't only happen to smaller nations. It can happen to four-time world champions. It can happen to the nation that gave the sport some of its greatest moments ever. Football is ruthless and indifferent to reputation, and the 2026 World Cup, more than any before it, seems built to remind us of that. For Julian Nagelsmann, the tournament is the moment of truth. He's spoken about the aim being to win the World Cup. That was always going to be scrutinized, but after a qualifying campaign that included the most shocking result in Germany's qualifying history, the minimum requirement has shifted. Simply getting out of the group stage would represent progress. Actually mounting a challenge for the title would be a story for the ages. The squad has the ingredients: Wirtz, Kimmich, Woltemade, potentially Musiala, Nico Schlotterbeck and Jonathan Tah forming a genuine partnership at the back, a goalkeeper in Oliver Baumann who has stepped into the enormous shoes left by Manuel Neuer's retirement and carried the starting spot through all 6 qualifiers. The pieces are there. Whether they come together in North America, whether Germany finally rediscovers what it means to perform at a World Cup, is the question that will define this team's legacy. And that question started in Bratislava on a September evening when Slovakia ran at the world champions, exposed their lack of heart, and sent a message that football doesn't care about your history. It only cares about what you do next. So here's what I'd like to know from you. Do you think Germany can finally get past the group stage at the 2026 World Cup? Do you believe this squad has what it takes to go deep? Or is the mental fragility too much to overcome on the biggest stage? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This debate is just getting started. If this kind of deep football analysis is what you come here for, hit the like button and subscribe. We'll be covering Germany, every Group E match, and every major storyline of the 2026 World Cup from now until the final whistle in July. This story is still developing, and as always, football never stays quiet for long. See you in the next one.